All right. We'll call to order the meeting of the Salem School Committee. Folks, we're going to start the meeting. Hey, folks, we're going to get started. If you can, please keep it down. Yeah, right. Thanks. 1, 2, 3. Eyes on me. Okay. Call to order the meeting of the Salem School Committee of December 15th, 2025 at 7 p.m. This meeting is taking place in person at 29 Highland Avenue, room 227. You can also join the meeting via Zoom using the link posted in the meeting agenda. We have one member participating remotely, so votes will be by roll call vote. Our first order of business is approval of the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion made by Member Campbell, seconded by Member Miranda. Under discussion, seeing none. Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Cornell?
Yes.
Member Hoffman?
Yes.
Member Manning?
Yes.
Member Miranda?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Public comment. The Salem School Committee would like to hear from the public on issues that affect the school district and are within the scope of the committee's responsibilities. Spanish interpretation is available for anyone who needs it. The members of the school committee would like to remind the public that Salem Public School students regularly attend school committee meetings. We encourage all meeting participants to model respectful and productive public discourse for our young learners. We'll have public comment from the chambers, and then any public comment on Zoom, please use the raise hand function. The school committee policy is a limit of 5 minutes per speaker. You can make your way up to the podium if you'd like to provide comment. You do not need to identify yourself, but you're welcome to if you'd like.
Hi, my name is Lila Hauk. I have two students at Carleton. One will be out at the end of the school year, moving up to 6th grade, and my other child will be starting 3rd grade in the fall. He's in 2nd now. So I have some thoughts that I put together. Sorry, I just ran up the stairs here. So I looked up the definition of plan in the dictionary. And it says it's a method for achieving an end, an often customary method of doing something, or a detailed formulation of a program of action. As far as I've heard from the last school committee meetings dating back just 6 weeks, the committee has some ideas on school reconfiguration, but no actual plan. So I guess tonight the vote is happening on what idea sounds best as to how to reconfigure the schools, and it seems like that is the decision regardless of chaos and distress that it may cause to our elementary school children and their families going along the way. For some children in our community, school is the one reliably safe space that offers the comfort of routine and predictability. I believe a poorly planned reconfiguration will have the most detrimental effects on these students and their families. The elected officials in this room talk about equity, but fall short in delivering to the most vulnerable members of our community. I can speak personally about the teachers and administrators at Carleton. They're hardworking, big-hearted, extremely dedicated and diligent, and in my experience, go above and beyond what their jobs require. Every person in that building is an asset to Salem Public Schools, and it's shameful that you downplay the prospect of losing any of them as employees as well. It's really only a small number of positions that would be eliminated. To be clear, I'm not saying no school reconfiguration ever. I'm just asking you take the time to make an actual plan that will serve the students and families of Salem Public Schools. I'm asking that you move forward with transparency and take this community's concerns seriously. Setting in motion a half-baked plan to have the elementary schools in Salem reconfigured by August 2026 will not only not close the budget gap as per the numbers you guys have presented, which is supposedly the whole reason for reconfiguration, but it will cause such an expensive and stressful web of new logistical problems to solve that will leave everyone wondering why you proceeded with the reconfiguration at all. Everyone will lose, including the elected officials, but more importantly, our kids will lose. Thank you.
I will wait for you to get seated before I get started. Good evening. My name is Megan McGough Christian, and I am a parent of a Salem School student. It seems clear from the last few weeks that it is likely that the committee intends to move forward with a merger of some sort. I think that we are all in agreement that options 1 and 2, combining Saltonstall and Horace Mann, failed to meet the district's value of equity, as well as failing to advance the goals of this reconfiguration effort to save money while limiting the number of full-time educator reductions. I will let fellow parents speak more on that if need be, but I would like tonight to speak on 2 other important factors I ask you to consider as you make your decision. First, I do want to address the idea of moving Bentley, a selective and closed enrollment school, into the center of town, while concurrently removing the open enrollment schools from the center of town, aka the new old option. It seems that some committee members like this idea on locating the dual language program from Bentley in the Saltonstall building. While I recognize the research on the benefits of dual language schools being built in a community where those languages are actively spoken, we must also balance that with the reality that Bentley, as it is currently configured, is not an open enrollment school. Moving Bentley to the Saltonstall building now, with the new old plan, does more harm than good. By open enrollment schools, I mean that a student faces no obstacles in joining the program other than the availability of space. At Saltonstall, we are welcoming to students who face disruptions in life that can make school attendance a challenge. We often welcome students who are moving into Salem at all times of the year and in all grade levels. We welcome kids who do not thrive for whatever reason at other schools in the district. We know that no single school, no single innovation, no single environment is best for every kid. But having a centrally located, easily accessible to the disadvantaged neighborhoods, having a school centrally located, easily accessible to disadvantaged neighborhoods where all are welcome is essential. Bentley's wall-to-wall model does not enroll students beyond grade 2. Enrollment is selective even in the lower grades. And I doubt the model, honestly, is ideal for students who arrive mid-year or mid-week into a classroom. This is by definition a selective enrollment school. As it happens, other schools in the same neighborhood, Salem Academy Charter, is also a selective enrollment school. Merging Carleton with Saltonstall, one of our options tonight, complicates it even further. Removing Saltonstall from its current location and combining it with Carleton in Bentley's current building would result in there being no open enrollment school at all in proximity to the center of town in South Salem. This is simply unacceptable and fails to meet the goals of this district, and I ask you to vote no on the new old option. Secondly, I want to address the reuse of school buildings. As some of our friends from Carleton were discussing a few weekends ago, Dr. Reich, you have the experience with closure of schools, having survived Chicago Public Schools 2013 school closures. That committee in 2013 closed 50 elementary schools across Chicago in the interest of balancing the budget, updating buildings, modernizing the infrastructure. That effort, at the time the largest mass closing of schools in the nation's history, according to WBEZ, has a mixed record as far as success goes. At first, I have to admit that as a dear friend of a Chicago teacher with a vivid memory of the chaos of CPS in the mid-2010s, I was hard-pressed to see how that could be valid here. But over time, I have come to think that at least one major lesson of that closure is important for us to consider here in our own much smaller district. One of the major issues with the CPS closures is that the promised reuse of the 46 school buildings left after the closings were complete simply did not happen effectively and quickly. 10 years later, in 2023, 26 of the 46 buildings were still vacant. These were predominantly in the west and south of Chicago in minority-majority districts.
That's the 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment in the chambers? Is there any comment on Zoom?
Let's see, any raised hands? Oh, wait, hold on. Someone just did.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, so I'll try to be quick. I listened carefully to all 8 scenarios presented by the consultants, and I understood why 4 were eliminated based on the misalignment with our core principles. And for that reason, the late reintroduction of a new scenario from the consultants' not recommended list is deeply concerning for me. It has felt sort of like a bait and switch and undermines the integrity of the process as it was presented to the community, which is reinforcing why a large portion of the community declined to engage in this process because they perceived the process as predetermined rather than truly collaborative. So I urge you to carefully consider the implications of this late change and the message it sends to families, staff, and the broader community. Thanks.
No other hands? Okay. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda approval. These are the minutes of the forum of November 25th, the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of December 1st, the minutes of the special school committee meeting of December 6th, approval of a field trip for the Salem High School Harvard Model UN delegation to Boston, and the approval of the warrants of November 26th and December 4th.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Motion made by Member Cornell, seconded by Member Campbell. Roll call vote. Member Cornell?
Yes.
Member Cruz?
Yes.
Member Hoffman?
Yes.
Member Manning?
Yes.
Member Miranda?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Matter carries 7-0. Student representatives report.
All right, good evening, everybody. I just wanted to present some of the things we've been doing with the Student Council recently. So we did meet with Dr. Zreik at the beginning of the month, and we went over a few of the things and the processes that the new incoming students have to go through in order to enroll at Salem High School. We found a lot of different methods that we, the students, can help better the newcomers' connection to the school and how we can welcome them more and provide them with a safe and non-overwhelming experience as they first get introduced to the school, considering how much is going on throughout the year, whether it's clubs or even lunch. It can all be very, very stressful for newcomers. And we found a way with one of our very dear Ms. Gratero, who works to enroll the students, and she also works very closely with IEPs and 504s. We found a way to connect our student mentors. So it's the new program that I have been talking about these last few meetings, where we implement a mentorship program for the new incoming students with the already attending students at Salem High School. And we have found a way to connect our students with the newcomers to ensure that they all have their necessities and their interests met throughout the year. We have also decided to invite 5 freshmen to our next monthly meeting with Dr. Zreik and to introduce them more to what student council looks like. And we have also started editing the bylaws, which is something that has not been done for a long time. And so far it's going very good. We're working, myself and all of the elected officers are working on the bylaws, and we'll continue to do so during break. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee members for our student representative? Okay. Thank you very much. Superintendent's report.
All right, good evening, everyone. Just have a few updates for the committee. First of all, the Salem High School musical is this week on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at Salem High School Auditorium. The admission is $10 for students, seniors, and active military, $15 for general admission. I should tell you what the musical is, the Prom School Edition. And I highly encourage people to come and check out the talent that we have at Salem High School. And audience members are encouraged to bring clean, gently used formal wear to be donated to the Clothing Connection to benefit students unable to afford such formal attire. So come check it out this week. We do have a community dinner this week that we're hosting with Root North Shore, our food service department, along with Root. We'll have our first free holiday solstice community dinner on Wednesday from 5 to 7 at the Saltonstall School cafeteria. The community dinner is open to any SPS family and staff, and there's a capacity of about 212 guests. And families are encouraged to register ahead of time, but we hope to see everyone for what we hope will be, community dinners, a more regular occurrence of having community dinners. So I hope to see folks there. I also, as I shared with the school committee, we did get approval formally now that the middle school dual language program has been officially approved by the Department of Education for expansion to grades 6 to 8 at Collins Middle School. The program may now move forward for implementation beginning in school year 26-27, which is this fall, as the fifth graders move up to sixth grade. So we're really excited about that. But we now have the formal news. Hopefully that will come with resources from the department. And I know Andre and the team at Bentley are working on that. But very excited that the program will be able to grow in the future. I also just want to wish everyone a happy holidays. I know this has been, there's been a lot of conversation in this district, as we see here tonight, and has been for the last 6 weeks or more. I hope everybody enjoys the fact that we have 2 full weeks of break. And no one is more deserving of that, I think, than our staff and our students, who have worked really hard this year and deserve the time to disconnect. Hopefully not disconnect and not come back. We want to see everybody back on June 5th, Monday. No, not June. You know what it is I've been channeling June after walking outside here today. So thank you for January 5th, Monday, January 5th. But it's the first time in a long time that we've had 2 full weeks of break, and I hope everybody has a chance to enjoy that. But I hope everybody stays healthy, happy, and it's a memorable time. And I know it's a special time for a lot of our families. Happy Hanukkah to those folks that celebrate. And with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor, unless you want me to mention the MSBA update now.
I think we should probably
do you want me to do that? Okay. So in your packets, you have a MSBA update. The big news is that we did meet a milestone in that, we're going to meet a milestone this week in that we will be submitting our schematic design submission to the MSBA on the due date of December 17th. At the last meeting, which was last week, we reviewed the schematic design submission, which is our initial design for the building. What the MSBA will look at, they'll give us feedback. I'm sure there'll be a lot of feedback on the plans. We are printing out what that schematic will look like to share at every one of the schools again, so folks can see the updated design. Each school has an older version of what the building will look like, but there's already been updates for this submission. And at this point, we're in a holding pattern to wait for the MSBA to give us feedback on the plans. The next school building committee meeting is on January 29th from 6 to 8 right here. But the good news is we're on track. I don't know if you want to say anything about the construction estimates, or we're good on.
So the construction estimates that were approved for the schematic report were pretty consistent with the preliminary schematic. It's I think they came down by about $5 million, so it's around a $450 million project. We don't know what the MSBA reimbursement will be. We suspect somewhere around 40 to 50%. We'll know that in February. In January, I will file a bond order with the City Council to fund the project and request a debt exclusion vote from the community, which will take place on May 5th, if the council approves. Then the only other thing I want to add about the high school project is we do have some changing membership on this committee, and so because we do have a school committee representative on the committee, I'm going to ask the school committee member-elect Meg Stott to fill in. She's been serving as the city council's representative on the building committee, and so I think the continuity of her service will be valuable, and the city council will select another representative from their body to serve.
That concludes my comments about the MSBA. We'll do the transfer later.
We can talk about it under motions.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll take it
All
up
right.
later. We'll move to subcommittee reports. Item 7. Are there any subcommittees? Nobody? Yep. Member Campbell?
The curriculum subcommittee met about both the competency determination proposal that's due to DESE on December 31st, and we moved it to policy for their review, and pending their review, which I don't know when it's scheduled, will come before the committee on the 22nd, so that we can vote on that, so that it can go to DESE in time for their deadline. We also met regarding the program of studies for all 3 high schools, and those were all recommended to come before this full committee. That will also take place on the 22nd.
Member Cornell?
And the policies subcommittee did meet and approved the competency proposal to send to the committee on the 22nd, and we'll make a proposal to suspend and adopt rather than go through the 3 reads, because we have to have it done before January 1st.
No other subcommittees? All right. Motions and resolutions. First item listed on our agenda is a budget transfer request. Do you want
So Assistant Superintendent Pauly is not here, but on her behalf, there's a series of budget transfers that are recommended for your consideration. The total amount requested for transfer is $51,000. Because the total of these transfers exceeds the $15,000 threshold established by policy, and because these transfers are across cost centers, we're asking for school committee approval to make these transfers. The rationale is in your packet. There is a transfer in the amount of $12,000 at Witchcraft from contracted services to stipends to help fund stipends needed throughout the school year. In out-of-school time, there is a total of $9,000 from contracted services and office supplies to stipends to fund out-of-school time stipends throughout the remainder of the school year. And then under special education contracted services, $20,000 to be transferred from contracted services to tutoring supports for students that require extra tutoring. And then finally, also in special education, $10,000 from contracted services to stipends to help fund the safety care stipends, which is the training we provide our staff around safety care. And so those are the 4 transfers totaling $51,000 for school committee consideration.
Move to approve these 4 in the total amount of $51,000.
I'll second.
Motion made by Member Campbell, seconded by Member Miranda. Roll call vote. Member Cruz?
Yes.
Member Hoffman?
Yes.
Member Manning?
Yeah. Yes.
Member Miranda?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Cornell?
Yes.
And myself, yes. The motion carries 7-0. Next item on our agenda is reconfiguration. Is there a motion? Member Cruz?
Thank you,
My
Mayor.
blind spot.
In your blind spot, but always next to you. So before making motions, I think that I didn't have the opportunity to join you all last week. I was dealing with a stomach bug, ripped through the entire Cruz household. So, but I did have a chance to I'm fine. To watch the minutes, to read the minutes and then watch the deliberation. So just first wanted to thank my colleagues, the superintendent, the consultants, and the public just in total for the deliberations around the reconfiguration and what's been proposed. I didn't get an opportunity to engage on Saturday, but I just wanted to be able to just share some of my thoughts in advance of motions heading to the floor. So I think the thing that sticks with me after reviewing the data, engaging with the public, and then spending time with educators and families from across multiple school communities is that folks really care about their schools. That is number one, top of mind. Your kid only gets to do the third grade once, and that's something that I deeply respect. And for our educators who are watching the process, many of them, some courageously came forward to, I think, talk about what they believed was in the best interest of children and their colleagues. But I know many are watching with bated breath about what's going to be their working conditions for next year. So, I do appreciate the folks that have just reached out and taken the time to connect. So as I was going through the fact base, listening to some of the testimony, I think the thing that stuck out with me was, again, what was the driving factor for making the decision? And I understand it was the fiscal situation that we were dealing with, but also the educational modeling within the district, and what was our long-term vision, which of these paths would ultimately get us to a place that would be the most impactful for student learning. And in particular, I just wanted to elevate something that I thought was really important when I was spending time, and so did members of the committee, with families and educators from the district after our public meetings. And I found it to be really impactful and validating was when I spent some time with the Bentley families and the educators who stayed after the Spanish-speaking forum to just connect one-to-one. And in many ways, they helped shape my thinking. And so when the options were first presented, I think with a clean slate, the thing that I wanted to stress was that all options needed to be on the table for the purposes of deliberation. But the first option that we had talked about in June was option 3. And at the time, that was not recommended. And I know that we were still exploring what was going on with the MSBA. And when that came up, I thought, well, maybe option 4 would be the best option. But I found a lot of the testimony that we heard from the public to be invaluable. And in particular, I wanted to raise up testimony from my former tutor, Ms. Kelly Quinn, which I found to be really compelling. In her testimony, she talked about the limitations that the current model at Bentley has due to the space, the difficulties recruiting staff, families accessing the programming due to the start time. And so, what I'd name about option 3 in particular that I really liked is that it offered the opportunity for the district to align our programs and buildings in a way that's more coherent, equitable, and sustainable over the long term. And, that's how I would rank. That was my top choice. Second would be option 4. And then some of the other options just didn't make the cut for me. So those are really my top 2 and the only ones that I think at this point that I would consider. And so I think that the thing that I would like to put out there around option 3, if we were to consider it, is that I would support this option, but I would support it phasing it in over a couple of school years. And the way that I would propose doing that is twofold. First, we need to take into consideration the level of planning that needs to happen in the district, capital readiness, and instructional design. So for this year, what I would propose is that fiscally how we make this work so that we could have what I would call a plan and phase year would be to, number 1, advocate to increase the city's educational allocation from the assumed 5% to 7 or 8% for the planning year so that we can close the deficit that mirrors the amount that we're currently considering with all the reconfiguration options. Many of the current and soon-to-be city councilors have expressed an interest in funding the schools at a higher level. So I would hold them accountable to that and charge them and the mayor to work together on a city budget that invests more in our schools so that we can really thoughtfully plan out the educational design and the model. I believe that the Salt and Stone in the long term would be an ideal home for the dual language program, but there's some things that I would just name that in this planning year that we would still need to go through. So I do think we would need to also consider pursuing a special act of the legislature. We did this one time during the 2009 financial crisis, where we pursued a 0% interest loan to the district to close a budget deficit that was caused by mismanagement from a previous budget director. I spoke with the former state representative, John Keenan, who's our current Salem State president, and he talked about his approach to doing this during a really tough budget time. I'd be willing to do this with the Ways and Means Committee and to approach the chair and advocate for this over the next 2 years. And what this would allow us to do is it would relieve some short-term financial pressure that the district is currently facing. We would avoid kind of making the big sweeping move until we knew what the Chapter 70 reforms actually look like. And then I'd be willing to advocate for additional funding through the supplemental appropriations that will inevitably come from the millionaire's tax. They're not leaving the state, but we did see an additional appropriation last year, and that would be, in particular, what I would do is I'd pursue funding that would allow us to bring on the additional staffing and support and resources that we need from a capital perspective, a logistics and planning perspective, to make a long-term reconfiguration move possible. That includes, thinking about building a new elementary school building. And I think what I heard in the concerns with this process, in particular from the folks in the dual language program, is just something that I wanted to raise up, is that many of the families that we're talking about that need equity within our district, they can't be at public meetings like this. They're not a part of the decision-making processes, and even with our best efforts to provide a Spanish language forum and a smaller conversations, I think taking the time to pursue this option would allow us to ensure that we're engaging those members of the community that don't normally have a voice in school-based decision-making. So that would be the kind of proposed approach that I would put forward to the committee. So it would require us to take on some additional steps. But I do believe that it gets us ultimately where we'd want to go, which is, I think option 3 is the ideal state for the district, but it allows us to kind of think it through a little bit more and to, I think, address the longer-term financial issues that we will again face, not just in this coming budget, but in the following budget as well. And then I would just name that again for my second choice, the option to merge Carlton and Saltonstall into that one building. I view that as a functional bridge. In the long term, I still think that we need to be talking about building a new elementary school building and those programs and the innovation program itself being reexamined just to ensure that, again, if there's going to be a merger of that program in any of our school buildings, that we're taking into full account kind of what's worked well with that particular program, but incorporating the voices of the families that weren't a part of designing that innovation plan. So I just named that those innovation processes would have to open up as part of this process. So those are my kind of immediate thoughts and the approach and pathway that I would put forward to support ultimately getting to path of taking option 3. And so those are kind of my full thoughts on where I stand with reconfiguration.
You want to make a motion?
So I'd move to approve option 3 on the conditions that I laid forth, that we'd pursue some of those fiscal options, and that would be my motion.
I'll second the motion.
So we have a conditioned motion for scenario 3 made by Member Cruz and seconded by Member Miranda under discussion. Member Campbell?
This is perhaps more a question. I have a lot of thoughts, but before I go into any of those, this is perhaps more procedural. Is with this conditional vote, to me, it feels like it feels complicated to have such a condition on it to vote when those conditions can't be met in this meeting. And so I want to make sure that folks feel comfortable with that condition being met, being able to vote on that, even knowing whether it can or cannot be met, or if perhaps folks might feel better with a different one if those conditions can't be met. I'm not sure if I'm making sense, but the condition
Having
of
a
it
contingency.
makes me, having that, like, that makes me nervous to put forth something and then not have an agreed upon plan for if those things did not come through.
If I understood the point, it's if there's a contingency option that could be added to the motion, if those things don't come through as some kind of fail-safe is what that's the concern, that there isn't a fail-safe that's built into the motion.
Right, I'm concerned that you have a contingency that we do not know if it could or could not be met at this time. So you'd be agreeing to something with a contingency on something without having.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think what I would name is that right now we're operating off of the assumption that on the city side we'd be committed 5%. That's the assumption that we're making. We haven't yet approved a budget for the school side, so we're already making the decision on reconfiguration without other steps having been taken. So on my part, I think that the contingency is always there from a school committee perspective, that there's other steps in any process where we can't vote on an innovation plan being changed without, going through the public process that's required. You can't vote on a budget without going through the public process that's required. Those are all contingencies. I think my intention here is to continue to support the superintendent's recommendations on around changing our elementary school reconfiguration, while noting that our advocacy around these things that are fiscal in nature, they never stop. You're always advocating, you're always pushing. So, I don't necessarily know if we need to build in a fail-safe as much as that's already kind of part of the process, given that we don't have a commitment on the city side that it's going to be the 5%. We have an assumption that we're building next year's budget from, and we're making a decision, or at least there's a proposed decision that's being made based on that 5% without knowing that that's actually what we have in hand, and we haven't even started that particular process.
Member Campbell?
Sure, I hear that. However, I heard a couple of additional contingency pieces, including perhaps conversations with the Ways and Means, conversations around appropriations from the millionaire's tax, and also a hope or an expectation or a contingency that there would be a much larger percentage than I think I certainly have ever seen on this body. And so for me, I think it would be hard to say this plan, and I'm not even weighing in on the plan or not the plan. I'm just saying, like, to have that many contingencies associated with this particular motion makes me a little uncomfortable.
Understood. So what I would say is that I think I've seen this committee in the past engage in sending resolutions to the legislature to advocate for the things that we thought we needed, whether it was the first time around where we were trying to fix the funding formula or other requests. Obviously, I stand here with two different roles, and I think what I'm naming on my part is that I think our state delegation can play a role, as it has historically in the past, to help address budget deficits here within the district. So I hear you on separating out those pieces of the contingency. I'd be open to, removing those as a condition if folks just wanted to vote on option 3, but I'm kind of laying out I think the path to get to option 3 actually is in a sensible manner.
Member Cornell?
I just, I think I got a little confused. So are you proposing you're proposing 3, but, with all of these, with a lot of planning and these different contingencies built in, whether or not we, keep them as proposed, but also to merge Carlton and Saltonstall in the short term?
Yeah, so
Okay.
Yeah, my proposal would be to merge the Carlton and the Saltonstall.
At Saltonstall.
So I said that I'd support option 3 or 4. I don't think we can make a decision on which building it would be necessarily right now in terms of that particular proposal. I can't bind the future committee if they have to wait a year. I don't think I can do that legally, if that makes sense.
I'm still confused.
Yeah.
So are you proposing no changes for the fall?
No, I'm not proposing. I'm saying it's a 2-year change, so it would be fall of 2027 is when you'd make the change. But I don't think I can bind the next school committee to making, I don't think we can at least, doing something for the following year. Maybe we can. I'm thinking it through. Yeah, so option 3 is what I'd be proposing we'd vote for in the long term. So yes, it would be the Saltonstall Carlton merger, not happening at Salt's, happening at Bentley.
Okay.
And then Bentley moving into, sorry, this is why I needed to keep my notes in front of me. And then Saltonstall, Bentley moving over to the Saltonstall building, but it wouldn't happen until fall of 2027, if that makes sense. While we take that gap year with the funding. Apologies, I need to drink some water.
Additional discussion? Member Campbell?
I guess I'm just thinking that it might behoove us to debate the merits of the plan itself without without. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I think it would be better to have a discussion about the actual plan, whether or not whether or not all of that additional funding does or does not come through to provide us a year of funding, because then that's just my own personal opinion is. I think it would be, for me, I'm having a hard time, well, maybe I'm making assumptions about folks, but for me, I think there are some folks who are like, maybe they don't even like that plan at all, and the contingency, or maybe, I don't know, the contingency piece is really throwing me off to I think I just maybe need to think it over.
I totally understand. I think that that's what the deliberation period is for. So if folks, have thoughts on option 3 just without those other elements and they want to express those, and I'd be happy to hearing those. I heard some of it during the retreat, but
I guess what I'm trying to say is if the money didn't come through and we found that out, then what would happen? And I know that that's not for you or for me to decide, which does
wanted
make
to
me
be here.
nervous, but also I don't want to put anybody into a future bind by saying, we'll kick the can down the road and hope that these things come to be.
I hear what you're saying, Amanda, because we wouldn't be here. So that's the part that I get is unclear for us. I think the vote would lock us into option 3, but the school committee has the legal authority to go and change decisions if they had to, based on whatever changes fiscally. So, I would say that we'd be locking ourselves into option 3, but if things did change come, the end of that planning year, we find out what happens with Chapter 70, and then the school committee needs to make a different decision for whatever reason. I can't predict the future. I couldn't tell you with certainty what would happen, but I would imagine that they would always have that right to make a decision, to make a pause, to make a stay, to modify a decision that was made by a past committee. But I think as currently composed, I would say that this committee would be voting on that longer term kind of play rather than the interim step.
Member Cornell?
I would just point out that at the retreat, one thing that we were unanimous on is that doing nothing was not an option. And I think what you're proposing is essentially doing nothing for a year. And that is, we've talked a lot about what the larger ramifications of that are, which is potentially losing innovation programs, losing pre-K. That concerns me. That concerns me a lot.
Yes, I would distinguish doing nothing from a phased-in approach, which I think members of the committee here have stated that they'd be open to discussing how we phase in approaches here within the district. So around reconfiguration in particular. So, I would say doing nothing would be voting affirmatively to vote all these options down rather than having one in place. So I'd distinguish it on that fact.
Yep. Member Cornell?
But we would essentially be having no cost savings this year. That is what I mean. This year we would be doing nothing but planning.
Understood on that piece, but what I would say is that the advocacy that would be happening on the budget process and then the work that we would have as a committee. So I think the charge that I would put out to the future committee would be that they would be working with the mayor and the city council to push for the higher allocation on the city side to mirror the savings that would be proposed in this particular year while also pursuing the funding from the special act that I'm proposing that we've done in the past as a city when we faced a similar deficit back in 2009. So, that's the path that I'm proposing to get there, to being able to have that particular gap year. So I don't know if I would frame that as doing nothing. I think that what I heard from the superintendent in my conversation with him when I asked about the assumptions that we're making within the budget, and that city allocation, if we were advocating for a higher percentage while we were trying to figure things out and build ourselves along a runway, is that you could phase out the proposal if you had a particular percentage that was allocated by the city. And I know that the assistant superintendent provided what those percentage increases would look like to all members of the committee. And that, my push would be that we would look for, instead of the assumed 5%, 7 to 8%, to be able to close the gap at the amount that the superintendent is trying to suggest with reconfiguration in this particular year, and then you could phase it out to a second year. So that's what I'm pushing for. So Steve, I don't know if that goes or aligns with the recollection of the conversation that we had about it, but that's essentially what I was trying to achieve by saying that I think we should be pursuing a higher allocation in this gap year that we would take.
So let me express my concern with, first of all, as far as the city's appropriation, there's been over 10% when you add in the health insurance and debt costs that are on the city side of the budget, well over 10% increase over the last 2 years funding in the schools. And we're starting the budget planning process for FY27, so it is far too early to commit to whatever percentage is available. But suffice it to say, we'll be spending more on Salem Public Schools than the city ever has before, absent a fix to Chapter 70, which I think you and I know we've talked about for several years, is creating probably the larger constraint on our ability to fund our schools. The formula not only doesn't provide us with enough funding, but constantly moves the goalposts in terms of what it says the city needs to provide, and then levies an additional $1 million penalty on over the last couple of years for saying that we're not reaching those goals. The special act, my recollection is, as you indicated, Member Cruz, the special act was the result of financial malfeasance, and that the legislature agreed to help the district correct for a past problem that was not the result of any decisions that were made by a policymaking body for the committee. And I think it would be a very long leap to think that the legislature would go along with providing a special act to give funding specifically to Salem, when a lot of the challenges that we're facing from a financial perspective are not the result of malfeasance. They're the result of transportation costs going up, and out-of-district tuition going up, and electricity costs going up, all the same cost centers going up that other districts are facing. So if they provided it for Salem, I think it creates a precedent that any other city would look at and say, well, our district has these same financial pressures. How come Salem gets this special act and we don't? It seems like a lot to ask for, but I think my biggest concern with phasing in an approach over multiple years is the loss of educators, the loss of families to the district. I think that creates a degree of uncertainty that could create a fair amount of turmoil for the district in that interceding year, even if all the financial elements came together, which we don't know for sure. To my mind, we all agreed, I think, both in June and then also this past Saturday again, that the concept of scenario 3 is one where we feel is the best ultimate configuration for this district in many respects. The phased approach is that scenario 4 is the first step of that getting to scenario 3, and that scenario 4 brings two school communities together such that by the time they are moved as one, they are moving as one community, as opposed to students being asked to move multiple times, or with a fair amount of uncertainty about whether or not a special act is going to pass or a millionaire's tax is going to break our way. That's my sense of it, which is, that scenario 3 is something that I think we all agreed was a future condition that we would like to see for this district, but that the first step to get there is scenario 4. We've heard from the consultant team, from the superintendent and the district administration, from our educators, that moving effectively 3 or 4 school communities and over 700 kids in one summer is logistically fraught for this district to undertake at a time when we're also looking at the high school project, the expansion of dual language to the middle school, and all the other work that we have going on. So I have apprehensions about going directly to scenario 3, and I think I would just articulate that I have significant apprehensions about going to scenario 3 conditioned on certain things happening over the course of the next year. Yeah. Member Campbell?
I do agree that I have some concerns about the phased approach, in the sense that I think I'm an educator, not a parent, so I'll speak from the perspective of an educator. But, if I knew that my school community was one that was going to be merged, or had the potential to be merged, or was in the plan to be merged, and I did not yet know if my position was or was not in consideration for some type of reduction or some type of merging, I think it would be reasonable to start looking. People have healthcare to procure, which is not an easy task right now, and groceries and all of that stuff. So I would very much be concerned about the uncertainty that it would place on educators. I think that oftentimes, like the phased approach, it has a lot of merits to it because it allows for a long runway for planning logistically, but I do think that it can create a lot of uncertainty for people. And, just my own perspective, I would feel very uncertain going into it without I think it just kind of extends the uncertainty. And then when you layer in the contingencies, that also additionally makes me very nervous. However, which is why I would rather, I think, just discuss the potential for scenario 3 versus 4. I do disagree, though, that I don't necessarily view 4 as a stepping stone into 3. because I think that would require to do it fairly and to do it right for all of the school communities involved. You would have to leave a long gap of time to avoid like significant move after move, and then at that point, I think there's a lot of other things that are in play. So I don't necessarily view them as reasonable stepping stones from one to the next. Like, oh, we do 4 so that we can do 3. Although scenario 3 does require a lot of moving pieces and a lot of moving parts, I do feel as though if I'm thinking about the best interest of students and in the best placement of students, I do feel in support of scenario 3. I've thought a lot about it. I know logistically it's very challenging. My only thinking around scenario 3 is that I would prefer, and I checked the numbers, I believe it will still be feasible to leave the ECC there, so that we can do more intentional planning. But my biggest concern around like viewing 4 as a stepping stone to 3 is I just don't think that that's the good and right thing to do for kids or for educators. I think if we did scenario 4, we should do scenario 4 and use it as like, this is what we're doing, this is our approached plan. But I think any type of consideration for it as a stepping stone, I think it just lets the uncertainty linger, because then you sit and wonder, like, how long am I in this classroom space for? What is the actual long-term plan? How many years? Are they building a different elementary school in 10 years? That's ultimate, so I would prefer to look at it like scenario 3 or scenario 4, or, and rather than the linking of them or additional contingency plans. And I think, I just in good conscience can't view scenario 4 as a stepping stone to 3 for me. I think that makes it really hard for school communities.
Member Cruz?
I would just add that I think that the reason, I proposed the path that I did, and I'm open to just exploring option 3 on its own merits, of course, is also in large part due to the considerations around the ECC and the fact that the school building we would be sending we've heard from the educators. I think I've talked to school leadership. I went to parent-teacher conference, and I've heard from folks that they really do enjoy the way that the building is currently configured for ECC and the way the facilities are structured. I think we need some time to be able to think about that as the early childhood center. I think you can move some of our other partner programs in there in the interim, but I totally understand that particular school community also would need some time to make a transition to a new school building. But then I also think in the interim, I'd name that I do still have the concern that as part of this process that we needed to be thinking about the new Liberty in Salem Academy. And I know we've had different discussions about not Salem Academy, Salem Prep. And so I think as we think about Salem Prep and New Liberty, I just think that there was an opportunity to think about, where they could be temporarily housed as we think about that lease that they currently have at the Witch City Mall. So, that's another consideration for me on the 1 year. But I think to Member Campbell's point, like, I'm open to having the conversation about just the merits of scenario 3. And but I do want to name that I think getting creative and thinking about a phased-in approach is something that is prudent, that is possible. And then to the point that you made, Mayor, about the special act, I don't necessarily know if it needs to be a special act or if it's a budgetary amendment. I mean, in the past, during COVID, we passed what we called a pothole fund for municipalities in the state budget that allowed for districts to draw on grant dollars. So I think the point that I'm making there is that on my part, whether it's a special act, an amendment in the budget, I'm committed to working with Senator Lovely to helping to address both the facility needs that folks have within the district, but then additionally to provide some stopgap funding in the interim. And I understand that feels like an uncertainty for many of the members on this committee, but that's our charge as public advocates, is to go to the mat and ensure that our communities are getting what they need, and I'm willing to do that.
Member Hoffman?
I have some concerns too. I 3 and 4 are, I think, our best options. However, I worry about one is moving Bentley right now whereas we're not quite ready to grow that program. We're just moving it to the middle school. Salem has failed twice at dual language, and I would hate to see that happen a third time. Like, I would want to make sure that if we were to move Bentley to Saltonstall, that we had an actual plan. We have to hire teachers, and we'd have to figure out how to work it all together to make it solid. Like, I know it's solid in its building right now, and I think that their school culture is growing and bonding, and that worries me to move it to a new building, and then potentially try to find teachers, one that speaks Spanish and one that speaks English. I think that I also want to be cautious too, because of the new development that they're talking about down in the Point. Like, what's that going to do to the demographic down there? Is it going to price out our families that are there, and then they're going to be in a different part of Salem, and so then maybe our demographic switches to a different area of town that's struggling a little more than others. I also think that for number 4, I think putting 2 communities together to combine and bond together and have the innovation part with it and give it time to grow there, and it might not even be that community moving later on, because we actually don't know. Like, it's just I feel like number 3 is like a golden idea, like a star to kind of reach for, but it's not the right time to go that far of a stretch right now with the uncertainty, because we don't know if Chapter 70 is going to change, like, and it's not going to change next year, but we do know we will lose our early childhood education. And is that what we want to do? Like, are we not committing to that? We're just gonna, like, I don't think we can not do anything, but I also don't think that I think we really have to, like, think about the parts that are gonna hurt, the after-school programs. Then we have New Liberty and Salem Prep that we need to figure out a space for, even if it's temporary at the Carlton building. You know, I have my concerns about us moving it to the enterprise system. I'm not confident with, we don't have a great history of Salem State, and that worries me. And I don't want to give money to build a new school for our most vulnerable, and then in 15 years have to leave, or less, right? Like, there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to stay there. And that worries me, because I don't want to spend money at a college that's not ours, right? Like, if it's our space, great. But I think that that moving 2 schools is more realistic. It's less than 700 kids. Like, moving everyone all at once is a big on-taking for everyone involved, and I don't think that's fair to families or to our staff. But I think that also, there's also, like, we're talking about the potential of, 5 years, 10 years for another, or 10 years for an elementary school, 5 years for a potential another move. But as long as we have something mapped out, like, this is our course, this is our strategic plan, and parents can find it on the website, so that we have, and then we talk about it every month instead of the 6-month thing drives me crazy. Like, I don't want to just talk about it in our retreats. I want to actually have conversations about this throughout our time, because it gets really frustrating, because we have all these ideas, but then we get stuck now having to make a decision. And I don't think that's fair to anyone, and I don't think it's fair to the oncoming members of the school committee that are going to have to make hard choices too. Like, we're all making a hard choice this year, and I just want to be respectful of our oncoming school committee members, our parents, and our kids. Like, a small step is not a bad thing.
Member Miranda?
Thank you for that. I just want to add to that comment, Member Hoffman, that the 1,200 units that have been proposed at the Shetland development is also not a guarantee. So in terms of, like, the gentrification that will inevitably happen if that goes through. I would hope that this group of people individually would be advocating for supports with the city council on being really mindful about moving that forward, because it does impact some of our most vulnerable families over there. As time has gone on, and since December 6th, I've had a bit of a change a change of heart, I guess, in terms of putting the green sticker that I did on scenario 4. Some of the reasons have already been mentioned here tonight, but I think one of them, and this kind of tracks back to something that was mentioned at the end of your comment, Member Hoffman, around moving the dual language program. I don't think that moving that to Saltonstall would just be in order to immediately grow the program. I think that movement would be for a few different reasons, but one reason being that the dual language program is not, and bilingual programs in general are not meant to serve kids like my own kid that is a native English speaking child. They were created to provide high quality education to English learners. And so when thinking about centering that voice, the Point neighborhood, which is where we have a school that, we're talking about moving things around, has listed time and time again the Saltonstall School and then also the Bentley School as their second choice. The Point neighborhood, South Salem, Vinnon Square, and Highland have not listed Carleton as their preference, their preferred school. And so I think going from the data that we do have from our families in the Point and families that we maybe haven't had the chance to hear from, I think listening to the data that we have on that that tracks back to their preferences is really important. And because of that, as well as some other reasons, I would be in favor of voting on scenario 3 tonight, the new old scenario 3. Though I'm not attached specifically, and I'd want to learn a little bit more about potentially keeping or moving the ECC.
Oh, you're right. That's the wrong one.
Right.
Oh, man.
Manny, I think you're off mute.
Yeah, I think I'm going to vote for the one that's just the two scenarios, scenario 1 and 2. I think it's 4. And I'm doing it because I think it's close enough that we need to support the communities that are already involved. So Carleton and Bentley will be supported, but the same thing that Amanda was just saying. But I think it's because we're supporting those people, so we vote for number 4, not number 3. I think that's the way to go on this. I think if we do that, we're in a better place. And I think if we vote for the others 4, we'll be, I think, not going. We wouldn't be going down the right road. So I'm gonna say it's vote for the numbers 1 and 2 in the original thing. So it's clearly 4. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Manning. Member Cruz.
I just wanted to clarify a couple things. I guess first I had a question for Member Hoffman. I wasn't clear on your point around the Early Childhood Center and how we would lose it if we voted for option 3. So I don't know if you could clarify that point. But then the second piece was around With respect to the Chapter 70 formula, this is the final year of implementation of the Student Opportunity Act. So the law and the formula are set to essentially expire come the conclusion of the budget process. There's currently the committee that's meeting to determine what we're going to do with the future of the formula. I can tell you with a good amount of certainty that the formula changes almost annually based on what we provide in terms of the increments. So the formula's already changed a number of times, which is why we exceeded the original $1.5 billion that the plan set to offer to districts and got to $2.5 billion. It doesn't mean that all communities necessarily saw what they were expecting out of Chapter 70. Salem and a few others, because of other elements of the formula, without question, were disadvantaged. But I would just name that the formula is going to change in this coming year. That is going to be a debate within the legislature. So I think I would just clarify for the public with certainty, Student Opportunity Act runs its course come the end of this fiscal year, and there will be a new education funding formula one way or another. And then Member Hoffman, I don't know if you could just clarify that point on
What's that?
on option 3, no contingency involved. You had mentioned that you were concerned that that move somehow would impact the early childhood community staying within Salem. Could you just speak to that just so I can understand where that concern lies?
The concern, you said you were worried that the ECC, you didn't want the ECC to close.
Oh, no,
And if
not
you
the
could speak-
ECC. I just meant our early, the pre-K programs that we have going on.
Use your microphone.
Hear you on the Zoom for like the last few minutes.
Our pre-K programs, not the ECC.
Understood. So when you say our pre-K programs, you're talking about the ones that
Worry
are
about us
located at
being
the
able
other
to
schools?
fund our pre-K programs
Okay,
and keep them.
understood.
Vice Chair Cruz, we can't hear you on the Zoom either. Could you speak into the mic?
Thank you.
Member Campbell.
Yep, I have thought long and hard about this, and I want to echo a lot of Member Miranda's points, which is that dual language schools are intentionally designed to be integrated, inclusive, but most importantly, designed for immigrant children and for language minority youth. That is their entire mission, and that's what they were designed for. That's what this program was designed for. And they are particularly well suited to be situated in neighborhoods exactly like the Point because of their integrative nature, a two-way program where it brings together language groups across multiple different populations. It is intentionally designed that way to make sure that they are integrated and inclusive. And I agree wholeheartedly that I would not advocate for any sort of expansion within the elementary grades just simply by moving it, but instead honoring the fact that we have so many kids. I think at last check, at least 3 buses coming from that particular neighborhood to the Bentley School. And although we have not been able to collect this particular data anecdotally, I hear many times that families often originally choose the dual language program and then later have to adjust their request for the program because it is not located for them. Gentrification of dual language programs is a very real concern. It happens all the time. It happens in communities here in Massachusetts as well. It happens across the nation. It is the double-edged sword of a really wonderful dual language program is that it becomes a victim of its own success, and it becomes only accessible to families who can reach it, access it, figure it out, network their way into the school. And I am significantly concerned that that could happen to this particular program. I know that the wait list is longer for a particular demographic, more so than our newcomers and for our Spanish-speaking families. And I do worry about the gentrification of that program, and it not through any fault of the staff or any fault of the district, but not being able to carry out its mission specifically for immigrant youth if it remains geographically inaccessible to the majority of our families. And so I do understand that it is more complicated, but I am firmly of the belief that it is better to do the right thing all at once, even if it's really hard, even if it's really tricky. I have talked to Dr. Zreik about some possibilities of what he would need in order to make it happen. And I feel I have gone back and forth on it quite a few times because I understand that it is not the easiest solution. But this program, which by the way, is not in fact a selective program. You can see it from the demographics that it does in fact enroll children past second grade. it's intentional integrative design to me. It really should be in that neighborhood where the majority of its children come from. And so while I do think that option 4 can, in fact, resolve some of the additional budget issues that the district is facing, it can right size. I'm not opposed to option 4, but I strongly believe that option 3 is the right thing for the particular demographic that I think we really should be committed to serving.
So you're saying,
Yep, Member Hoffman.
so you're saying you would move to 4, but not expand it yet?
Option
3, rather.
3,
sorry.
yes, not expand it. I don't think anybody would advocate for expanding immediately the next year in the elementary grades. But I think, to Member Miranda's point, that for me, the most salient point of the move is not the expansion, it's the right location for that particular programming and that particular demographic for the mission of the school.
Further discussion, Member Cruz.
And I know I laid forward a path for phasing, and I heard my colleagues just state that they'd prefer to just talk about option 3. So I'm just going to amend my motion to just to approve option 3 and to remove those other elements, but leaving that for members of the committee. I'm happy to send those things in writing and some of the research that I've done, just so folks can take a look at it on their own time. And if members of the committee or a future committee wish to further engage and understand what options are available to help address the fiscal crisis within the district, I'm happy to continue to thought partner with you all.
Does somebody have to second an amended motion?
I think if you made the motion.
I made the motion, so I'm good.
Yeah. You can withdraw the second if you wish, but you don't. Okay. Further discussion on the motion. Yep, Member Cornell.
I just want to thank all my colleagues for being so thoughtful and bringing, all of these really important considerations into the conversation. I can't vote for 3 right now, but I just want to be very clear that I support 3. When we talked about it this summer, it was, I think, an option that we all felt really strongly about. I really take Member Campbell's points to heart. I would like to propose 4 because it brings us to a position where we can have more equitable and uniformly sized schools. And we began this conversation because of the budget. That's where it started. And so our strategic planning, I think we did a really good job last Saturday of having, or 2 Saturdays ago, about grounding ourselves in the strategic plan to remind ourselves of what our values are as a district. But the budgetary piece is significant. It's important. So I think for me, I just want to reiterate my support for 3. I just think in the short term, I don't think that that's something that I can vote for. But regardless of how we end up as a body, whether we're unanimous or we're, relatively split, I know that everybody will be working really hard over the course of the next 9 months to implement whatever it is that we decide on.
Member Miranda.
I also just wanted to add, sorry, I forgot to say this the first time that I spoke, but this past, what day is it? It's Monday. Okay. Last week, I had the chance to meet with the LPAC, and I also had the chance to meet with our family engagement facilitators. What I understood from the meeting with the family engagement facilitators, who are obviously working very closely with our families, was that proximity to the dual language program for a lot of our families in the Point creates a barrier to access to the dual language program, which we know that a bilingual education is amazing for a million reasons, but I thought that their points around barriers to access were very important. So just wanted to highlight that here. And then I also wanted to highlight, because I think one of the things that I've been wrestling with is how we are identifying harm and what type of harm could come from delaying a move of the dual language program to the Saltonstall building. And I think that there are harms to delaying, and one example of that is that it's obviously for a lot of the children that might attend otherwise if the school was closer to their home, they lose out on a dual language education. And I think it's the harm of delaying such an action, however many years that would be, for very good reasons, not wanting to disrupt the same school communities over and over. I think that I think there would be multiple cohorts of students that would miss out, and they'll obviously never be able to have that experience of having a dual language education. And then the other part that I wanted to mention in terms of that aspect just escaped me, though I have notes right in front of me. It's gone. It's just poof, gone.
We can come back.
Okay.
Member Campbell.
While you search for your point, I appreciate your point, and I would like to quantify what that would mean for children who would miss out on that in those multiple cohorts, because within the dual language education experience, it's not just the opportunities to become bilingual and biliterate, which is obviously a huge economic benefit. It's also the access to content. When you come into a new country and you don't have access to the language of instruction, you lose years of content mastery. That's what the research tells us again and again and again, is the content gap can be as small as 3 years and sometimes much higher depending on the child. Also losing access to family connections, culture. And so I take your point really well, and I appreciate you raising that. And I just, as a dual language educator, wanted to quantify what that means by delaying continued access. And in my number crunching and conversations with the district, the Bentley as it exists now, without any additional classrooms, could accommodate upwards of, I believe, 8 to 10 kids per classroom if it were to move. Because right now, the largest barrier is being able to get children to the school, particularly on the Spanish side. And so for me, that is 8 to 10 kids in every single grade level, K through 5, for the foreseeable next decade. And that, to me, although I can appreciate the challenge around it, logistically, it's not this. None of this is anything I take lightly. But I also, in counterbalance, the opportunity for that many kids to remain connected to their language and their culture, and to have access to content and the opportunity to become bilingual and biliterate. That, to me, feels like too high a cost to pay.
Thanks. Member Miranda.
I did remember my point.
You'd get there.
Thanks so much. I just also wanted to mention, and this is very important, so me forgetting is not, I have 22 pages of notes here. I also just wanted to highlight that scenario 4 with having the idea that we would later on move the dual language program to the SALTS building guarantees continued disruption for our staff. And I think that level of instability is something that we're trying to come away from as a district. And though I see the rationale behind going with 4 because it quote unquote fits inside of 3, for those reasons around stability, I would vote against it.
So I'll add for my part, Member Campbell and Member Miranda, I certainly agree that, having the dual language program at the Saltonstall building makes all the sense in the world. I think we also know a history of the larger and more complex school reconfiguration or consolidation effort is the harm that happens tends to accrue to the most marginalized students. And we've heard directly from our educators and directly from the district that moving this many students in one move is logistically a challenge for them. And I take them at their word that, and I'm concerned about making these moves in 1 year doing greater harm to the students that we're all trying to, I think, provide the greatest degree of protection for, because they're the ones who are most vulnerable to negative impacts from these kinds of transitions and changes. It's not to say that I don't think scenario 3 is the scenario where we want the district to be. And if we were designing this today, if this was the committee that was making the decision about where the dual language program was going to live, back when they had that conversation, I think we would have arrived in a very different place. And that's a place where we want to arrive at. I think that we need to do it in a way that is achievable and responsible to our goals, our equity goals, our goals for financial sustainability, but also for what we know is achievable for this district. And so I'm most comfortable with scenario 4. I don't believe that it's not related to a future state of scenario 3. We can't tie the hands, as Member Cruz indicated, of a future school committee, but it provides the forward-looking opportunity for that move to happen. We're entering into a new strategic plan development. That's the opportunity to lay the groundwork for it. We do have a project in the core program with MSBA, so to the extent it's related to any future elementary school project, it's not going to be funded by the state until that's completed, but it doesn't have to be related to that elementary school project. It can happen before then. But the precondition for scenario 3 is, to my mind, still is the two smallest elementary schools that we have coming together as one community. Member Miranda.
The number that I heard from Dr. Zreich, and I know it's probably not like a super, like there hasn't been a ton of research, but I trust I trust what he's saying, was about 80 to 100K in order to secure some type of project manager to oversee all of these changes and do it well. With voting on scenario 3, it wouldn't, from my perspective, it would not be voting on scenario 3 and then, forgetting this ever happened. It would, and I would say publicly, like I would do everything that I could to make sure that you have the resources necessary in order to do this well. And I would advocate for that. So I think the number, like 80 to 100K, even 200K is like relatively small. And I think it's not worth, it's not worth the disruption that we could guarantee by voting for scenario 4.
Dr. Zarek, can you speak to the implementation of the scenarios?
In terms of the moving costs and the transition costs, that's what.
Yeah.
I think the more I've looked at it, I said 80 to 100. I think at minimum it's 100,000 to we'd have to stipend staff, get movers. I'd like to have project management support if it's 4 schools moving. So minimum would be that. It could be done, but obviously I thank you for advocating for the resources that we would need if that was the scenario that the school committee voted on.
Member Cruz?
So I appreciate you saying that, Member Miranda, because I won't be here. So certainly, I think if this was the option, knowing that someone would be willing to go to the mat for those resources is super important. I'd also just name that I think that with respect to our larger conversations around facilities, that following, I don't have too many more, I think I have one more opportunity to do this at the special meeting, but I'm not going to talk very much. I do think that the district needs to fully explore if we're going in a different direction here and eventually getting to a place where Carleton, the building where it's currently located, if that becomes our early childhood center and we're thinking about moving all the other pre-K seats that we have in the public side and then also our partner programs into that building, I just want to name that I do think we do have money that's being left on the table from our conversations around rental facilities and leases that can help close future budget gaps. So I would just stress and urge to this committee that as we think about the partner programs that we have, Pathways, Angela's Daycare, apparently, several churches now, the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA and others, that this committee does task itself with examining our current rental and lease agreements to ensure that we are bringing in some revenue if we're going to have our partner programs co-located with the public programs that we're offering to ensure long-term stability, because we know with the Chapter 70 formula, those public pre-K seats don't get the same rate of reimbursement that you would get for a kindergarten through 12 student. So I would just, put that stake in the ground for folks to consider in the long term, that I do think that there's some potential revenue that could be coming in from partners that I think we've seen in other leases that currently exist within the district, and that we should explore those down the line during the budget debate to ensure that we can offset some of the trade-offs here.
Member Campbell?
I just want to clarify, Dr. Streck, I heard you say moving 4 schools, and in my preference would be to leave the ECC where it is. My understanding is that Carleton and Salts would fit just as tightly between the 2 buildings. When I looked at the numbers from Dan and Sarah, I'm looking at Dan and Sarah. That is my understanding from the numbers, is that they could in fact both fit with the ECC still there.
We don't think so.
No.
I did check on this when the question came up, that you couldn't have all 3 schools in the same building, Carleton, Saltonstall, and the ECC.
Long term, you'd have to move ECC to.
Like long term, but
No, even,
Is it-
we can confirm, I'm seeing agreement. We did look at this again. We don't think ECC would have to move. Either to Carleton or to Horace Mann.
Member Cornell?
I just want to say one last thing, so I'm being sort of transparent about where I'm coming from on 3. So I feel like over the past month, I've been sort of balancing, or not the past month, since we brought option 3 back onto the table. I've been kind of balancing doing the least amount of harm to the fewest number of students versus doing the most amount of good for the greatest number of students, at the same time understanding that we have to save money in the short term to protect the greatest number of educators and programs that we care about. And so those are the things that I've been trying to balance. So when I think about doing the least amount of harm to the fewest number of students, and I've said this on the 6th, the population that keeps coming up for me is Saltonstall. And so when we're looking at the population, and not like completely, this is where the tension comes from, because I don't want our English language learners to be, or our Spanish-speaking families to be disenfranchised and not able to access this program that's incredibly important to them. But at the same time, our Saltonstall population has, nearly the same number of low-income students that the dual language program has. It has more students with disabilities. It's got, a very high number. It's got almost similar number of high needs students. And we know that this, displacement adversely affects those students tremendously. And having, I've spoken to this before, but the trauma in that building and the trauma that those teachers have lived with for the past however many years is still there. And that's been a lot for them to overcome. And we've seen them make incredible gains. And that weighs tremendously on me. Taking them out of that environment will have an adverse effect on those students. And they are our most, second to our dual language populations, they are our most at-risk population. So when we're talking about centering equity, that is something that is just in the forefront for me all the time. And to that end, I really could not see myself taking a vote to move those students.
Member Cruz?
I just moved a question.
So the motion before the committee is to adopt scenario 3 without conditions. The motion is made by Member Cruz and seconded by Member Miranda. So roll call vote on scenario 3. Member Cruz.
Yes.
Member Hoffman.
Sorry, which one are we voting on?
Scenario 3.
3?
Just leave it, you know.
No.
Member Manning.
No.
Member Miranda.
Yes.
Member Campbell,
Yes.
Member Cornell,
No.
and myself, no. The matter fails 3-4. Is there another motion?
I'll make a motion to support option number 4.
Second.
Motion made by Member Cornell, seconded by Member Cruz for scenario 4. Under discussion. Member Campbell?
I'll just flag, I think this is perhaps a really short-sighted approach. If it's what the committee's going to put forward, and clearly that is, but I would just flag my concern that it, to me, feels incredibly short-sighted in the long run. I worry that there will be some consequences to it that we can predict here and are going to see.
Member Miranda?
I'll agree with that. And then also just want to state that from the data that we do have, I want there to be an understanding from everybody who votes, and I'm not trying to guilt trip anybody, but I want there to be an understanding that some of these families did not request Carleton, the Carleton Innovation Model, for a reason. And this scenario, to me, feels a lot like forcing something that some of our most vulnerable neighbors have specifically not asked for. And I think that that's really harmful.
Member Cruz?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just echo some of the sentiments that have been expressed that I do think in the long term, option 3 is still the ideal state. Recognizing that I still think that moving forward with reconfiguration is important. I won't be able to support the motion because I do believe that, on option 3, that is the best course forward. But I'd just name that, I do think in the short term with this particular proposal, I'd ask that, future members of the committee just consider when you do make that long-term move to think about, pairing this also with future MSBA considerations, and that we think about a long-term kind of strategic planning conversation around our elementary school, early childhood centers that, I think gives us the opportunity to, I think, build the confidence in that we will eventually get to a place where the dual language program is centered in the community that needs it the most.
Yeah.
Oh, Member Campbell.
I just want to add that I had the opportunity to speak with, I won't say many Saltonstall families, but several Saltonstall families who had expressed interest in, had the program moved to that neighborhood, to be able to join the program like at this juncture, and then after confirming with the Bentley School that there are in fact places. So again, when I'm thinking about access to programming, this does not provide access to that programming. This continues to have them at a school that provides monolingual instruction to the best of everybody's capabilities, but the research says is not the best program option. It is not research-based. It is not supported in any evidence base for English learners. That's dual language, and that is just my continued concern, is that we are continuing to make inaccessible the most research-based program for English learners. It is just simply too far for families to walk to, and if we do it the other way, they would be able to walk to that program. So those are my concerns with it.
Move to question.
On the motion for scenario 4 adoption, made by Member Cornell, seconded by Member Cruz. A roll call vote. Member Cornell?
Yes.
Member Cruz?
No.
Member Hoffman?
Yes.
Member Manning?
Yes.
Member Miranda?
No.
Member Campbell?
No.
And myself, yes. Scenario 4 is approved. The motion's adopted 4-3. Member Cruz?
I'd move for a 5-minute recess. I need some water.
Okay. Motion for 5-minute recess. That objection?
2 minutes.
2 minutes?
Yeah.
2-minute recess without objection, seconded. 2-minute recess. We are back. Dr. Zarek, do you want?
Yeah, so just in terms of next steps, I think I just want to be clear with the community. We do plan on sending out a communication to the district tomorrow, just summarizing this. But by the end of this week, we should be able to share information about the leadership of the school, as well as opportunities for families in both schools and staff and students to participate in both a transition team writ large, as well as an innovation plan team, as we promised and discussed throughout the process. We'd be looking for representation from both schools, parents and staff, from both schools, an equal number of parents as staff, and we would ask people to submit their interest by the beginning of January, and so that we would begin to start the work right away upon return from the break. At the January 5th school committee, which is our first regularly scheduled meeting after the new year, I will be presenting a plan or more specifics about the timeline and considerations that we have for the merger. I understand that there's a lot of emotions right now. We want to make sure that we honor those. I know that I've had a chance to speak to both principals at length today and on Friday. They have plans in place to speak with children tomorrow. I think they've done a good job of being thoughtful about what the message is. We also see this as an opportunity to create a new school that is stronger, with a vision with a design that accentuates the strengths of both school communities. We have committed to the innovation model, but there's also tremendous strengths that both schools have that need to be part of this conversation. And I think it's important that as educators that we focus on the opportunity to do something, to create a third larger school that is as strong as any in the Salem Public Schools. And I have the utmost confidence in the staff and the leadership of the schools that we can do that. And as I promised this community throughout this whole process, this is going to be a significant amount of my time, the district's time, in order to make sure that this goes well. But I have no doubt that we have the right people. The majority of staff will have opportunities to be part of this community, even as I've started to map out and to have discussions with the union and with the school leaders. The majority of educators have the opportunity, will have the option of being part of this school. And so as much as I know there's a lot of emotion, I'm incredibly optimistic, and I think there is a real opportunity to expand what we know has been a high-interest program in Salem, or a model that's been high interest. I do want to respect that people need time to process and over the next couple days, but we are planning on hitting the ground right away to make sure this transition goes well. And I plan to report to the school committee on January 5th more of the details. But like I said, by the end of this week, the community should have information about the school, the leadership, and opportunities to get involved with this transition. I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
The next items on our agenda are approval for third reading of several policies.
Make a motion to approve policy AA, policy AC, policy ACR, policy ACA, policy ACE, and policy ADE for a third read.
It's a ADC is the last
Sorry, ADC.
Second.
Motion made by Member Cornell and seconded by Member Cruz. Under discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote on adoption of the policies for third reading. Member Hoffman?
Yes.
Member Manning?
Yes.
Member Miranda?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Cornell?
Yes.
Member Cruz?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion's adopted 7-0. That concludes motions and resolutions. School committee announcements. Seeing none.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Member Cornell, seconded by Member Campbell. Roll call vote. Member Manning?
Yes.
Member Miranda?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Cornell?
Yes.
Member Cruz?
Yes.
Member Hoffman?
Yes.
Myself, yes. We are adjourned.